I hate electronic chiming clocks, and yet there's always one sounding off when I want to make a video. I know most people watch these videos just dying to hear those clocks, but when you deal with them day in and day out, they do get a little bit boring. So let's try that again. If what you happen to be looking for in an alarm clock radio is a wake-up time that is very easily set, then it just so happens that back in the late 1980s, Sony certainly could have helped you out with this, the model number EZ-4 EZ Alarm Dream Machine. Yes, Sony apparently decided to keep the model number simple as well, rather than waxing lyrical with it as they more commonly do. And I'm sure someone will be along directly to point out the irony of calling a device that wakes you up in the morning, usually rather harshly, a dream machine, but so be it. I certainly didn't happen to choose the name. Hello there everyone, I am of course uxwbill as always, and today we're going to take a more in-depth look at this Sony model number EZ-4 EZ Alarm Dream Machine. This is about as easy as clock radios get, but like me, I think the market at large was wondering exactly why the world needed this. It's my understanding that these are actually fairly uncommon in this day and age. Even when they were new, they apparently didn't sell very well. There was this wood grain model that you're looking at right now, and I believe there were also variations offered in black plastic and white plastic. There might have been some other colors as well, but those happen to be the only variations I can recall seeing. Now, that's not to say this thing certainly wouldn't have some utility. I would imagine this could be an enormous benefit to someone who is stricken with a condition like rheumatoid arthritis and finds it difficult, if not impossible, to operate the more usual small control buttons. Now, usually I have these things powered up and running by the time I start making the video, but I did not in this case because I actually wanted to show you something fairly unique that this particular model does when you plug it in. You see, almost every clock radio ever made initializes to flash 12 o'clock after it has lost power. But in a true sign of the fact that I am a nerd who cares about things that other people don't even notice, this one does not do so. This behaves just like some Delco radios in GM automobiles from the 1980s and the 1990s, in that when you plug it in, it initializes to display 1 o'clock. Now, I suspect that there are a few problems with this particular specimen. First of all, if I pick it up and shake it, there's very definitely something loose in there, as well as some broken plastic. I also noticed that when I plugged this in for the first time, the vacuum fluorescent display was very slow to warm up. And even on its highest brightness setting, it is quite dim. Do not let the camcorder's take on this fool you. It's done a lot of hours and it's much well worn than it looks. I also note with great interest, despite the large and convenient knobs that are provided for setting the wake-up time, that the display itself is actually rather small and, in my opinion, kind of hard to read. I feel the same way about the station display as well. So let's go ahead and see what you get beyond those two big knobs on the front. I'll go ahead and turn it so it faces forward. You can hear some of the broken plastic rattling around in there. And then we'll adjust the camera tripod so that you can see the speaker grill. I'm going to say that is a 1.5 to 2 inch speaker at the most. Over here, you get to choose what kind of an alarm you'd like to wake up to. Your choices are cancel, radio, or buzzer. There is only a single alarm provided by this model. Next to that is the Dream Bar. This gives you 9 more minutes of slumber after the alarm goes off. It's more commonly known as a snooze, with or without the E button. I don't know of anyone who can actually start dreaming again in 9 minutes. I certainly can't after an alarm has gone off. In fact, I usually wake up before the alarm does and I just lay there and stare at it, wishing that I could sleep in those extra couple of minutes, but knowing full good and well that it's not going to happen. And then finally, on the right-hand side, we have 3 operation buttons. A sleep timer that allows you to specify up to 120 minutes worth of sleep time, which is unusual in a lot of clock radios. Most of them only go to about an hour. Some of them will do more than that. This one actually lets you go all the way down to 15 minutes. And apparently you choose what you want by depressing the button multiple times. The more times you press it, the more time is accumulated on the sleep timer. And all in the world that does is simply play the radio while you drift off to sleep. When I was much younger, I actually used to enjoy that. These days, I find it very hard to go to sleep with any kind of noise going on in the area. And it certainly doesn't help that I'm a light sleeper. So let's go ahead and turn it on its side here, where you'll see two more knobs. The larger of the two is the radio tuning knob. Then there is the AM/FM band switch. And finally there is the volume control. And I will tell you right now, although it may be a spoiler for some, that the volume of this radio, when it plays, what it lacks in speaker quality, it makes up for it in terms of volume quantity. On the back, we have nothing more than two ventilation openings, and a warning is always saying that there's no serviceable parts inside. Not that that has ever stopped myself, or probably almost anyone else that has ever watched one of my videos. On the left-hand panel, there are no controls or buttons to push, but there is a cute little disc-style logo that says, Simulated Wood. Not that you didn't know that already. This thing doesn't really even look vaguely like it's made of real wood. I mean, come on. But who knows? Maybe there was some sort of government stipulation that said they had to call it out as such. Let's go ahead and turn this thing on and give it a listen. We'll audition the alarm a little bit later. Here it is that I have noticed another problem. The on and off buttons, they don't work correctly. They probably are suffering from very, very dirty contacts. There is a display dimmer switch underneath the alarm dial. I think you can see what I mean by the display having done a great many hours, in that the one segment is actually illuminated a little bit more brightly than the 2 minutes digits happen to be. Likewise, if I do turn the alarm on, you can see that a small hyphen over here appears to indicate that it is armed and will go off, and that segment is also a goodly bit brighter than anything else in the display. Setting the time is accomplished in the usual way. There is no extra convenience here. You simply get two small micro switches, and that's exactly what they look like. I don't even think there's a button pad or anything over them to make them a little prettier, and I don't believe that there's a lockout on these either. So if you accidentally activate them, you're going to knock the time setting of your EZ Alarm Dream Machine off by however long you happen to hold the button. I don't even know if these are forward or reverse or split into hours and minutes. Let's go ahead and push one and find out. Okay, that's your fast advance forwards, and it looks like that's your fast advance backwards. So they advance slowly if you simply press them momentarily, but if you hold them down after a second or so, they start advancing like crazy. So I guess we'll go ahead and we'll set the correct time on this, even though there's really no point in doing so. Although this is strictly a 12-hour clock, the display does have the capability to be used in a 24-hour model. I overshot it a little bit. Thankfully, I can go backwards. That ought to do very, very nicely. So now that we've set the clock, let's go ahead and try listening to the radio. We'll start out, I believe it's set for the FM band. As I mentioned previously, these buttons up here do not work correctly, so I'll actually have to use the sleep timer button. So we'll push it once, and of course nothing happens because this is the video, and if it worked perfectly, that would just be too much to hope for. So we'll push it a little harder this time. There's your 15 minutes. There's your 30, 60, and 120. Interestingly, it doesn't stop at 90. And as usual, we're tuned into the piano music station, though they're not actually playing any piano music at the moment. Sounds like strings and woodwinds of some kind to me. So we'll go all the way to the bottom of the band here. We'll turn up the volume. Well, we'll really turn up the volume. So headphone users, beware. As I'm sure you heard, it can really stand up and deliver. I think it's safe to say that this would get the most stubborn sleeper out of bed.
Chance of showers and thunderstorms, high 78. Wednesday, sunny.
It didn't quite sound like ELO to me. Was that a cover? maybe a different version?
Building materials, farm primitives, antiques, hay, lawn and garden equipment, farm toys, and so much more.
Broken, so forgive me for my moment of your peace. Make up on your helper fix it. Pretty ladies are here. We're done.
The tuner certainly seems to perform decently well and seems to have remarkable fidelity considering the very limited speaker that it's equipped with. Let's go ahead and try the AM end of the band and just see how that happens to work.
The Titans playoff spot last year was largely driven by your Houston Texans.
Better move on down the dial or we'll get dinged for copyright, I'm sure.
The producers to not let the coaches see that Outback Steakhouse lobby that we were sitting in until they turned the corner. They were already mic'd up, cameras rolling, and you could just watch. You could see it, couldn't you, where their faces would just relax. Like
Institute. They're a nonprofit group with free resources for your board, training for community managers, and information for homeowners.
Worried about Gruden. I'm worried about the fact that he talks about not embracing analytics.
the Yankees are always...
Heard from KJ, and she says, my brother suffered with cluster headaches. He would come home from work.
Alright, let's go ahead and see if I am in fact smart enough to set the alarm, and we'll just see what the buzzer happens to sound like. Of course, I will have to get the radio turned off first, so I may have to pull the plug on it in order to reset it and thus lose all my work. And there, folks, is what the alarm happens to sound like. Rather curiously, it is mixed in with audio from the radio, so I guess if you like to wake up to both radio and buzzer sounds, you can do that with this particular model. Anyway, that is about all there is to say about the Sony EZ Alarm Dream Machine. So as always, I thank you for watching. And oh, by the way, if anyone happens to be wondering, the way you set this, you specify the hour with the dial on the left, and you specify the minute in 5-minute increments with the dial on the right.